What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker here on Unique Access, and today we're joined by TiRon Ayomari. Thank you for coming through, gentlemen.
Man, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes. And you guys recently put out the W.A project.
Yeah.
And that's also an acronym.
Yeah.
So how and why did you guys come up with this concept?
Well, we had been tinkering with the idea for a while. We had an album before called The Great and Wonderful, and we used the umbrella to kind of represent, like, you know, protecting your ego and not letting nobody rain on your parade.
Right.
You know, not letting nobody throw you off your course so you could just kind of execute at a high level, no ego attached. This is the opposite of it. So it's like W.A, the wonderful ego trip. Mm-hmm. So this is what happens when you let all of those, you know, things that you tell yourself affect you and, you know, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and also, you know, we have been dealing with life experiences, you know, external forces, negative energy, you know, people, that's, you know, shit that you deal with within the industry, you know.
Right.
You hear all these stories coming into the industry about, man, industry is like, you know, really like, but you don't really know until you experience it yourself, you know. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that influenced this album, us coming to grips with or rediscovering why we do this music stuff, why we started doing it, why we want to continue doing it, like, and getting away from the politics so much, you know, and getting back to the music and getting back to learning and growing and having fun again.
Okay. And I think too with the project, that one of the things that I like about your guys' work is that you really explore like emotions and like feelings that, and I think a lot of time, obviously other artists do and do it very well, but I think that's also not as often done on a high level with rap. So for you guys, why do you find that it's interesting or beneficial personally, artistically, to like examine these type of things that we don't see as often in a lot of rap songs?
Just because you notice a lot of, you know, a lot of things, a lot of toxic things that you might pick up from the music that you might be listening to.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like a lot of self-degrading kind of things. Like if you ain't got, like basically, and it's all good because, like, you know, we was all raised on hip hop, but really a lot of hip hop is on some like, in order for me to be the shit, you gotta be trash. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's, you know, it goes back to the dozens and all of that, you know, just kind of shooting on it. You know, it is a competition, so I understand that, but there are some people who don't know how to navigate that sometimes, so then they start looking for it in external ways. Okay. Be it drugs, be it, you know, spending hella money on stuff that they don't need to impress people that they don't really even know and like and all of that, you know what I mean? So we just really wanted to, cause we was dealing with that, and we noticed that, you know, suicide rates going up. Mm-hmm. The people, like kids are growing up with way more access to technology and looking at themselves like Instagram and all. They way more aware of their perception than we were at that age. Like, right. You know, we're trying to get the perfect picture and all of that kind of stuff. So it was really just kind of like helping people navigate through all of that a little bit while we navigate it.
Right, yeah, and we also find that by making music like that, it just, you don't get that a lot in hip hop. Like you were saying, like you get it, there's obviously certain artists that do touch on that and they do it well, but it doesn't happen like at a high rate or a high frequency that you might find in other genres as much, just simply because hip hop is so fueled by consumerism and
braggadocio.
Right, and, you know, it's a competitive nature, which is great, but it's like, it gets to a point where it's like a perversion of competitive nature, and then
right.
And then you're just using it in order to sell stereotypes.
And niggas don't want to grow up and get dissed by the music they listening to. Niggas don't want to be 50, 60 plus listening to that shit. Right. Just facts. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? There's some timeless hip hop records, and it's usually goes to, you know, the stuff that ages well, and generally, you know, a lot of.
Well, the irony is most of that stuff isn't negative toward people. You know, it's more celebratory, or it's more telling a story that isn't like downing people.
Right.
Right. Which is interesting, because that's why I've always thought that was interesting, because beyond the fact of them always being very specific, like a lot of diss records, even if they're huge at the time, they fade away because either the people reunite, or because it's so much based on the time period that it's not relevant 2 years from now or whatever. Whereas, you know, there's rap songs from the 80s that people still listen to and love because, like, It Takes Two by Rob Bass. Like, that's just, it just feels good.
It's a universal thing.
Yeah.
Skee-Lo, always make money. Always make money.
Yeah. And even, like, if you look at, obviously, N.W.A and a lot of the political records that were coming out in the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of Public Enemy stuff is still relevant, Boogie Down Productions, all that stuff too. And a lot of the conscious rappers of the last decade, like, you know, not so much.
Yeah, we like making music that we could see ourselves performing like 5-10 years down the line still, and
because it's hard seeing your favorite from the 90s go up there and do them records, like, you know what I'm saying, talking that, it's like, I don't even believe you do that anymore. Like, I don't believe you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, it's interesting too because you guys examine that a lot on the Wet Project, and one thing, like with the fake friends, for instance, like, so for you guys, how is it that, I know we kind of addressed it a little bit, but like, where's the comfort level come from artistically and personally to where you can address things that, you know, maybe make you uncomfortable or deal with your own shortcomings or your own things you went through that a lot of people don't like to make public?
I think it comes from just having conversations and talking about it ad nauseum.
Okay.
To the point where it's like, okay, we've explored, you know, philosophically a lot of the ideas. So now we can talk about it in music and kind of put it out there. That way, so once we do have interviews, we can actually speak about it. And I think it's when you kind of have a little bit more of an idea of what it is you're talking about, it's easy to talk about it.
It also allows us to grow as artists, like, because, you know, we're putting these emotions on Front Street. So when we go out, you know, not only do we have to represent that over and over again, we have to perform that over and over again. So we're forced to deal with these themes over and over again and come to terms with it ourselves, because, you know, we don't want to just keep on making the same stuff and not show people we're growing when we are growing. You know, we have these life experiences, and it should be put into the music, because, and you should, next time you hear new music from us, you hear a new perspective on these things, because, you know, we've grown from that point.
And everybody goes through it, you know what I'm saying? Everybody, especially now with the idea of like having, you know, instant thousands feedback. And thousands of, you know, instant feedback, but thousands and thousands of like friends, followers online, you know what I'm saying? That you can't really call when you get depressed. You can't call when you need to borrow money or nothing like that. Like, you have, so there's this idea of like, oh, you know, fuck them, I don't need this and this and that. And you grow up with this kind of resentment, you know, this resentment towards people. And that kind of ends up eating away at you. So that's the reason why that song exists, is because it's like that culture of like, fuck, I don't need nobody, when by nature we are a collective species. Like, which is why when you're in jail and you fuck up, in jail, they put you in solitary confinement. They take you away from other prisoners because we are that much of a collective species that you'll go crazy without having people. So it's like we feed into this negative idea of like, oh, I don't need nobody, I could do it on my own, no new friends. It's like, nah, we need each other, you know what I'm saying?
And that's the ego talking, you know?
Right.
So it's just another aspect of the ego that we wanted to pinpoint on the album.
And then obviously you guys did that with the It's a Trip as well.